Hello. Here we are. We're going to start taking, let me get this thing right here. We're going to start taking a journey through the Tripura Rahasya in this kind of format. We've done this text several times before. And we'll start with the introduction here, of course. And the introduction by Swami Rama. The translation was done by Pandit Rajmani Tiganayat, and then Swami Rama actually was extremely instrumental in improving the translation. And so, briefly, Tripura. Pura means city, like New York City, Tri is three. The word Rahasya means secret. So the text is about the secrets of that one consciousness that dwells in the three cities of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. In waking state, there's consciousness. In dreaming state, there is consciousness. In deep sleep, although we are asleep at the time, there is consciousness. You ask a person, how'd you sleep last night? You said, very well. Question, how do you know you were asleep? How do you know you slept well? Somebody was awake. Well, this is a way of holding this notion of one consciousness. And this consciousness plays out in all of those three kinds of ways. The gross plane of reality, the subtle psychic astral plane, and the causal plane. The fancy words for these are the planes of Vaishnara, Tejasa, and Prajna. And the fourth state is called Turiya. Another way of looking at that fourth state is as Tripura, the one consciousness that dwells in those three. And in popular tantric nomenclature, that one consciousness that operates out in that way is sometimes called the Divine Mother. Now, people come along and turn these into anthropomorphic deities and make statues and pictures and all this. And those are okay. Some of those things are very beautiful. But they are symbols of the underlying meaning, and the underlying meaning ultimately is what's important. And that is that this is about what we in our common language know mostly through the word consciousness, whatever that means. It is about the consciousness that operates in those three cities. Anyway, all here, this is from Swami Rama. This is the introduction to the text. We'll see how far we go with this thing. We'll just pick it up and keep going. And of course, as you know, this format of review is nice because it leaves it in archive, so people can come after this current time right now and look at it later on today and tomorrow. All human beings experience the waking, dreaming, and sleeping states, but only a fortunate few, the yogis, attain the fourth state called Turiya. These rare ones reach the summit and have a profound view of all states experienced by human beings. The aspirant who has attained such a lofty state is rare and knows the mystery of life here and hereafter. Nothing remains unknown to him. Doesn't mean there's no details in the world that are not known. It means the process is known. That's what's known. Such a great yogi does not belong to any caste, creed, sex, or ethnic group, because he has already transcended all such superficial limitations. An important point. The knowledge that enlightens such an aspirant is called Tripura Rahasya. That knowledge which brings that level of insight is the secret of the one in the three cities. The text by that name is one of the most significant scriptures in the tradition of Tantra Yoga. Its beauty lies in the fact that it expounds the lofty knowledge of inner truth while systematically offering practical instructions on Shakti Sadhana. What is sadhana? Sadhana means practices. What is Shakti? It's that emerging out consciousness. So it's the practices dealing with that Shakti. In Shakti Sadhana, the aspirant learns to apply all of his resources to the task of awakening the dormant fire within and leading it to higher awareness, finally reaching the highest chakra, the 1,000-petaled lotus. In advanced stages of practice, the aspirant knows all about his future, even in the next life. This is the glory of Shakti Sadhana. Then he talks about the tradition. Traditionally, spiritual knowledge was handed down from gurus to their disciples, and this tradition still exists. In ancient India, it was customary for a student to know about the tradition and lineage of the knowledge he was receiving before he started treading the path of light. Thus, the Tripura Rahasya opens with references to the tradition through which it has been transmitted. The seers Meda and Sumeda are said to be the spokesmen of this scripture. They made it available to the oral tradition, and from there it was committed to writing. They received this knowledge from the sage Parashurama. Parashurama received it from Dattatreya, Dattatreya from Brahma, Brahma from Vishnu, and Vishnu from Shiva. In the Markandeya Purana, it is said that the Meda Rishi was also a teacher of Saptashati, another prominent scripture of Shakti Sadhana. Meda Rishi was initiated by the great sage Parashurama, and so in reciting the scripture, Meda Rishi begins with the story of Parashurama. Now all these names are interesting, but they don't have direct meaning to us because we have not met those people when they were embodied or whatever. So it's interesting, but let us continue. The wisdom of practice is what's most important. Hi Maya, hi Matesh. Parashurama is one of the key links in the long chain of the tradition of the Himalayan sages. At one time, Parashurama stopped doing his austerities. He felt badly about this lapse, and he repented. In this frame of mind, he encountered a man who was pretending to be completely disorganized and mentally disturbed. Pretending to be that way, huh? The man ignored him, but Parashurama, determined to talk to him, made persistent efforts to get his attention. The man did not lose his temper, even though Parashurama teased him obstinately, but kept on smiling, mumbling something that Parashurama did not understand. This behavior convinced Parashurama that he had encountered a great sage who had conquered lust and anger, and so he surrendered himself at the man's feet. Seeing this, the man said, I am Brahaspati's brother Samvarta. I renounced my home and my childhood and began practicing contemplation. I protect myself from people by posing as a lunatic. Posing as a lunatic. I remain in contemplation all the time and have no time to teach you. Go to the sage Dattatreya and he will initiate you in the worship of Tripura. Hearing this, Parashurama went to Gandhamadana mountain where the revered Dattatreya lived. This mountain is north of the Himalayas. In this calm and tranquil setting, he found someone seated in a meditative pose who greeted him with a smile, saying, "You are in the right place." The sage Dattatreya is seated in the inner chamber of this ashram. You may go in. Hi, Ed. Hello, Mukta. I don't think I know Mukta. Nice to see you. Parashurama entered and saw the sage. A courtesan was seated next to him, trying her best to charm him, and a goblet of wine was by his side. Parashurama was completely bewildered by this, but he had faith in Samvarta. Reminding himself that sages have their peculiar ways, he prostrated and sat in front of Dattatreya. The sage welcomed him. "O Parashurama, you have taken the path of enlightenment. To attain perfect control over sense gratification is the way of victory. To have control over the palate and the sexual urge is a great achievement. As you see, I keep the objects of enjoyment with me." This is the enlightened dude speaking. "I keep the objects of enjoyment with me. Both wine and courtesan are by my side. Seeing this, all the sages have left me," which is a beneficial thing if you're only trying to be of service to the rare few. "They despise me now. For what have you come? Do you not hate me?" Parashurama replied, "I have heard about you from the sage Samvarta, and have come to your feet with great shraddha, faith. Kindly instruct me." Sage Dattatreya was happy to comply and imparted the knowledge of Tripura Rahasya in the traditional manner. Having received this knowledge, Parashurama departed for Mahendra mountain to do his sadhana. He knows what to do now, he has to go do it. This phase of his sadhana lasted 12 years, and according to the tradition, it was during this time that he initiated Sumedha Rishi. The text of the scripture translated in this volume begins at the end of this 12-year period. Now, isn't this fascinating, I say with an admitted sarcasm, that we have millions of people, probably now millions of people, if not millions, it's certainly many thousands of people who have become certified, no less, yoga teachers in 200 hours. And here's a guy that isn't even ready to get started, so to speak, until he has invested 12 years. Something's a little out of balance, isn't it? Anyway. Just my personal rant for the moment. Shakti sadhana is not possible without initiation. Just as the Vedas cannot be studied without upanyana samskara, initiation into the sacred thread, Shakti sadhana cannot be done without formal initiation by the master. Hello.
And back to work.
Okay, goodbye.
See ya.
How's the cat?
She was sleeping very soundly and still let her to leave. So I gave her a little bit more formula and put her back down to bed, and she's still
Okay. You'll leave at a reasonable hour?
Yeah.
Okay.
3:30ish, I think.
Okay. Huh?
3:30ish.
Wow, very reasonable.
I've got a vet appointment.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Okay.
See you soon.
In Shakti sadhana, the yogi awakens the dormant Shakti power of his disciple through diksha, initiation. Ah, Destin. Oh, you're in Destin. Well, that's close. Yes, come anytime. That's kind of fun. We're neighbors. Hi, Radha. Radha is here. There are various levels of initiation, and it is given according to the aspirant's state of mind and level of awareness. It is important for seekers to thoroughly study the Tripura Rahasya under the guidance of a competent master. We come together and do the best we can. Sometimes you don't get a master, you get an assistant who has attained the knowledge of the scripture. To become qualified for the guidance of such a master, the student must have developed 3 qualities. Get ready, here they come. First, he should be endowed with firm faith. Second, he should be free from the attachment of mine and thine. And third, he should have a burning desire to attain pure knowledge. I like to make a couple little comments on this. First, he should have endowed with firm faith. This is not the same. This notion of Shraddha is not the same as blind faith belief as many of the religionists do. That's not it. It has to do with an inner sense of confidence, of certainty that I know I'm going in this direction. Feel it. You feel that Shraddha deep in your heart that says something to the effect that it doesn't matter what my family, my friends, my boss, my co-workers, my culture says. I'm going in this direction. I'm going to go in this direction. That's faith. That's the confidence. Second, he should be free from the attachment of mine and thine. If I was absolutely free from the existence of attachment of mine and thine, the journey would already be done. So if you're tempted to hear that suggestion there and think, well, I'm not qualified because I still have attachments, then we have missed the underlying point. The point here in saying should be free from the attachment of mine and thine means that you have lived enough in this world that you have become certain. It goes along with the faith. There's a certainty that says this whole deluded notion that I have, that this over here is mine and this over there is yours, I'm wrong. It's that faith that the insight is there. It doesn't mean that I actually, totally, as a personality person, have no attachments. When Raj shows up with mangoes, I enjoy the mangoes. Saying that playfully. So there's an insight about what it means to be free from attachment. Doesn't mean we've attained it. Third, he should have a burning desire to attain pure knowledge. And note the intensity with which I'm trying to comment on the first 2. That is the spirit of burning desire. It says something like this. I may not know how the hell to do this. I may not know what to do. I may be the worst student in the history of humanity. But the fact of the matter is, even as bad a student as I am, this is what I want. Period. I may have 1,000 other desires. I may have 1,000,000 other desires. But this one is on top of the list. It's burning desire. So these go together. Anyway, the Tripura Rahasya explains all the stages of enlightenment. All the stages of enlightenment, and inspires the student at every step. Other scriptures only talk about certain principles and tell the seeker what to do and what not to do, but they do not explain how to be. This scripture furnishes both the principles and the practices, and it actually is an incredible text. Another unique aspect of this scripture is that it is ascribed to a female deity. In the Tripura Rahasya, through the worship of and devotion to Mother Divine, the aspirant fathoms all levels systematically and finally attains the highest state of consciousness. Most other scriptures use the word he or other pronouns in the masculine or neuter gender when referring to God. But the Tripura Rahasya uses the word mother and other feminine gender terms when referring to the highest deity. And here, this notion of deity is used as a symbolic term. It does not mean literally that there is a woman in the sky any more than there is a man in the sky called he. These are symbolic terms. Very, very useful. Another thing here to chew on. Just look at nature around you. Who gives birth? Whether we're talking about trees or humans or cats. That Rojo was just taking care of a little itty-bitty baby little kitty cat. Who is it that gives birth? Is it the men or is it the women? It is the feminine that gives birth. Growth comes out of the feminine side of the equation. That's not a criticism. We need not take sides between masculine and feminine. But the notion, the tantric notion of Shakti, is that all of manifestation, the entirety of manifestation, is most parallel to what you and I know as a feminine process. And then when we anthropomorphize that so that we can tell stories about that, then we end up calling it a goddess, or we call it divine mother. Those are symbolic terms, but it's feminine. A child finds comfort in his mother's lap and is very close to her. It is easy for a child to converse with its mother and to learn from her. Similarly, in sadhana, the seeker finds that his practice is easy and spontaneous when he uses the words mother, Shakti, Mahamaya, or Tripura Sundari. This highly practical scripture, I want to make another comment before we go on here. In this tradition that I and many of us are from, the principle of yoga, as in Yoga Sutras, which is all about introspection, and the principles of contemplation that are mapped out so eloquently in the Upanishads, commonly referred to as Vedanta, and what is here in Tantra, are not seen as different things that are in opposition to one another. They are not seen as different things which are alternative to one another. They are seen as aspects of one process. If you have a cup of tea, it has an aspect of wetness, it has an aspect of heat because it's a hot cup of tea, and it has an aspect of taste, which is the flavor. They are all aspects of the one cup of tea. So the yoga of Patanjali, Yoga Sutras, and the Vedanta of the Upanishads, and the Tantra here that we're looking at are different aspects of one thing. That's the orientation of this tradition. They are not different choices. You do this or this or this. They build upon one another and they go together in the same way that wetness and heat and flavor all are aspects of a cup of tea. This highly practical scripture also reminds an aspirant that without Sankalpa Shakti, firm determination, neither philosophical knowledge nor spiritual practice has great value. It is through Sankalpa Shakti that one gathers the courage to tread the path. Bhakti, devotion, is also needed, for without it, spiritual practice becomes dry and technical. In order to acquire the virtues of Sankalpa Shakti and Bhakti, an aspirant must cultivate positive thinking, a virtue of a purified and sharpened intellect. This notion, this orientation of Bhakti is not about sitting around all day long singing songs and rejecting our intelligence. Nothing wrong with sitting around singing. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Hi, Linda. Nothing wrong with singing. But it's become very common, at least in our modern world, to think that bhakti means sitting around singing. And that if you're not sitting around singing and you're using your intelligence, you're just lost in your intellect. And that is simply not the case. They go together. When the faculty of discrimination is sharpened, Sankalpa Shakti strengthens. Sankalpa Shakti is a prerequisite for entering the subtle realms within. Without it, without Sankalpa Shakti, one cannot tread the path of Bhakti. You have to have Sankalpa Shakti, the determination, and that comes from wisdom. You have to have that to be able to actually travel the path of the higher meaning of Bhakti. Bhakti means compassion plus devotion. When the seeker equips himself with these two exquisite qualities, he is fully prepared to tread the path. Firm faith develops in the company of the sages by contemplating on the Atman and by practicing the systematic method of meditation described below. First, learn to sit still, keeping the head, neck, and trunk in a straight line, yet remain relaxed. Sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Second, practice withdrawing the senses from the objects of the world by fixing the attention on the flow of the breath. Make the mind aware that the breath and the mind are like two sides of the same coin, breath and mind. They are inseparable, twin laws of life, and we have to observe that for ourselves, that when the breath flows smoothly, what happens to the noisy mind? Check it out for yourself. When the breath flows smoothly, the mind becomes calm, doesn't it? It has been proven scientifically that when the mind is agitated, the inhalation and exhalation also become agitated, and jerks, shallowness, and several other inconsistencies appear in the flow of the breath. The next step is to realize the nearness of the self within. It's close. This is accompanied by gearing the mind and its modifications one-pointedly to the individual self only. Upasana, literally to be near, means to be constantly aware of the self within. This is the prime goal of that sadhana which leads the seeker to the highest state of attainment. Upasana, or devotion, has two aspects, external and internal. In external worship, objects such as flowers and fruits are used and rituals such as fire ceremony are performed. In internal worship, the mind and its modifications are made one-pointed and inward. Then, as the Yoga Sutras say, tadadrashtu svarupayavastanam, the seer is established in its own nature. And that's Sutra number 3 of Chapter 1 of the Yoga Sutras. It's the third sutra, and that's just the beginning of the book. Schools of Shakti Sadhana. There are 3 main schools of Shakti Sadhana, Kaula, Mishra, and Samaya, which correspond to the mental state and preparedness of the aspirant. All are concerned with awakening the Kundalini energy from its dormant state at the base of the spine and leading it to the crown chakra. Kaula is a highly systematic method of spiritual discipline which uses objects such as yantras and mandalas as a means of spiritual unfoldment, incorporating them into complex rituals designed to bring the senses under control. Adherents of this school concentrate on awakening the divine force latent in the Muladhara chakra, the root chakra. Mishra means combination. It is a midpoint between Kaula and Samaya, and it is here that the student begins the transition from external to internal worship. In this school, the student masters the symbolic meaning of the yantras and mandalas and learns to internalize them with devotion. The master imparts the systematic method of leading the Kundalini force to the Anahata chakra, the heart center, which becomes the center for concentration. Get ready. Samaya is the highest of the 3 schools and is practiced only by accomplished yogis. And here, this word accomplished yogis does not mean only those who have already attained the goal may even practice. It doesn't mean that. It means those people who have those previous qualities, the burning desire and the understanding of non-attachment and that kind of thing, and the conviction, the faith. So it's an attitude statement. The word sameya means I am with you. When the aspirant attains this state, he feels as though he is walking in Brahman consciousness all the time. His ajapa japa becomes spontaneous and effortless. Japa is a remembrance of mantra. Ajapa japa is when that remembrance becomes automatic. Even in deep sleep, he remains aware of his mantra because mantra becomes the predominant factor in all activities of life. As example of that principle, if you study the whole Bhagavad Gita, the 18 chapters which are symbolic of 18 days of teaching of Krishna to Arjuna, chapter 18, the 18th day, is when it has all already come together. But the last of the teachings, so to speak, comes at the end of chapter 17. Go look there for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. The last few verses of chapter 17, the punchline, the bottom line, so to speak, of all of the principles and practices that Krishna teaches Arjuna through that journey of that text, is Om Tat Sat. Mantra. It's right there. This is the finish line, the bottom line, however you want to call. This school, the Sameya, this school leads the aspirant directly to moksha, liberation. At this stage, the body is regarded as a living shrine in which the divine force dwells. All practices are internal. No internal method, such as contemplation or meditation, can be accomplished without establishing perfect harmony between the mind and the breath. And the aspirant is given breathing practices to establish this harmony. This is the principle of saying that the yoga, as in Yoga Sutras, and the contemplation of Vedanta and this devotion of Tantra go together. The dealing with the body and the breath is significantly taught and practiced and mastered to some degree in the yoga phase of that, so that you can do the contemplation, which is what he just said here. When the aspirant is fully prepared and yet still encounters obstacles, the master bestows his grace. Through his kind touch or gaze, the master gives the aspirant his power. This rare occurrence is called Shaktipata. It is not possible to bestow Shaktipata on the masses, as a few modern teachers pretend to do. And shocking as it is, this really, really does happen a lot. I have seen it happen personally. I have watched people that I have known for and cared for deeply manipulated significantly by this modern phenomenon. You know, come to me. The setup is basically this. Come to me, I will give you Shaktipat. You don't have to do any more meditation. You don't have to do anything. I'm going to do it all for you. I'm going to give you Shaktipat. The unspoken, the usually unspoken condition of this is, by the way, give me all your money. This is a part of the modern world that we live in. It's probably not just modern. It's probably been there all along. And so I acknowledge here, there's some opinions here. This is the opinions of Swami Rama. And who knows, maybe he's wrong. Maybe these Shaktipat gurus out there selling their services, maybe they're all really telling the truth. This rare occurrence is called Shaktipata. It is not possible to bestow Shaktipata on the masses, as a few modern teachers pretend to do. In all three schools of Shakti sadhana, the awakening of Kundalini Shakti is the central theme. An initiation is given step by step. the highest initiation is called Mahaveda. In Mahaveda, the final knot of ignorance is cut asunder, and the aspirant has access to the highest knowledge, also sometimes called the piercing of the bindu. Tantra, the technique of attaining the goal of Shakti sadhana, is called Tantra. This is a method of helping one to realize the Atman. Etymologically, the word is derived from the word tan, which means expansion or introduction, and the suffix tra, which means protection or guide. Thus, Tantra is the path of sadhana, which leads an aspirant to the highest state of protection, which is the highest state of attainment. Tantric scriptures expound the multifarious meaning of all the tattvas, the principles, from the absolute to the manifest world, including the science of mantra. The philosophy of Sankhya is related to Shakti sadhana or Agama scriptures. It furnishes three types of evidence: direct experience, inference, and the sayings of the adepts, as does Shakti sadhana. And you find that outlined also in the early Yoga Sutras, which of course rest on Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya also accepts the teachings of the Vedas. According to Sankhya, one can attain freedom from sorrow and pain by knowing tattva jnana, the knowledge of both the gross and subtle forms of the universe. The profound knowledge of life here and hereafter is attained through sadhana. An aspirant knows that there is nothing that actually goes to complete annihilation. No object is subject to destruction. That which we call death is a change of the form and name of that which is considered to be dead. When the body drops, the individual's soul is still carried by the vehicle manufactured by desires, the unconscious mind. As long as it drives that vehicle, it is called the individual soul. The moment it drops that vehicle, it becomes one with the Absolute, in the same way that a river meets the ocean and becomes one with it. In the Tripura Rahasya, the dialogue between Sri Dattatreya and Sri Parashurama leads the aspirant to know what is duality and what is absolute one without second, what is Dvaita and what is Advaita. The state of Advaita cannot be discussed, but can only be realized. Discussions are possible only in the state of duality. Here's a final footnote in this, and it's about this translation. I'll read this to you and then make another little comment about it. Pandit Tighanayat, being a scholar of Sanskrit, translated the Tripura Rahasya in a manner that was very terse and scholarly. Therefore, it was not accessible to modern students, especially those in the West. And Pandit Rajmani is a very bright scholar, but he translated it in a way that was not understandable. After a careful reading of this translation, Deborah Willoughby and I, Swami Rama, recommended that he modify it so that it would be accessible to the general reading public, especially those on the path of sadhana. Although this meant he had to retranslate the entire scripture, I advised him to do so because a scholarly, abstruse translation would be of no use to the general reader. Now, in actual fact, the one who redid the translation was Swami Rama. And of course, he's not going to sit there and force his student to drop his name from the book, because he Pandit Rajmani Tighanayat, was doing a lot of work to put this thing out, a great service to all of us to put this out for us. But it was scholarly, and so essentially Swami Rama rewrote the translation, and it got published under his student Rajmani's name, and that's entirely fitting. And so the outcome of this is a tremendous rendering of this text. There are some other renderings and translations around, and as you become familiar with the text, you'll find they all are rich. They all say something, but the particular choice of words that gets used when you take a short, succinct, pithy phrase and you bring it into English, it's very, very easy to slant the intended meaning of it simply because you're taking a dictionary and translating from one word to another, or you're overly scholarly analyzing the words. Whereas what's important is to communicate the underlying meaning. It's supposed to be about sadhana. Hence he titled this book Shakti Sadhana. The title of this book, but the actual title of the text itself is Tripura Rahasya. That's the reason that when I use the name here, I use the name Tripura Rahasya, because that's the actual name of the text. The title that they put on this book that I'm holding in my hand, when they publish it and the book has to have a title, the title of the book is Shakti Sadhana. The phrase Shakti Sadhana is not the traditional name of the text. The traditional name of the text is Tripura Rahasya. The Tripura Rahasya is one of the most wonderful and practical of all scriptures and is very helpful to those on the path of self-realization. I am certain that those aspirants who study this scripture in its present translation with full faith and a tranquil mind will have a new vision and will become aware of a completely new dimension of life. And thus ends the introduction to the text. To be continued, and we will start into the text and just go through it basically a chapter at a time. There's, I think, 22 chapters in this, and we will divide it up in a nice way as we go through it. So, thank you for visiting with us. Hi, Leela. Hi, Urban. And to be continued. Tripura Rahasya. Tripura. The one who dwells in the three. Which is another name. We talk about this as this being waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and turiya. Vaisranar, Tejasa, Prajna, and turiya. Another way of holding this is that this is Tripura. This is the one who dwells in the 1, 2, 3 cities of reality. Hence, what I out here in my avidya, as a body and personality and breathing-based person out here in the world, I am trying to find and know that one Tripura, that one that dwells, manifests out and dwells in these 1, 2, 3 cities. That's what it's all about. Thank you all for visiting. I hope this is enjoyable. This is a profoundly useful text. I'm quite looking forward to going through this with you, and I hope you enjoy it as well. So anyway, bye-bye.